Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Malika Young Pak dotting some my chess, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so it's been a little while since I've been on. It's been like 5 or 6 days since I've done a video. Very unusual for me. I have had a lot of stuff going on, so I haven't really had the time or the energy to really do videos. Unfortunately, just kind of need a break. Be taking another break tomorrow. But I wanted to try to come on and at least try to catch up a little bit. I've been pretty much MIA during this tournament, as some of you guys have noticed. I am, as you guys of course know by now, Wesley. So he was eliminated a little while back. I went ahead and just jumped into the past and grabbed one of his videos or one of his games between Alireza Firouzja. So to get into it. For all of my people that are coming from the Philippines, I would say mabuhay to you. Kamusta na aking makaibigan? Maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking mga video. Appreciate you guys very much for all the support and being present. I also did have somebody that made a donation to me. And as I always say with the donations, if you do want me to specifically put your name in the box, I will. But if I don't get any permission from you, I would just go ahead and leave it anonymous, because I know that some people don't want, their name just kind of, blasted and stuff like that. So, I try to respect people's privacy. But like I said, if you have donated in the past or you're going to donate in the future, very much appreciate it. But if you do that, make sure to let me know if you want me to put your name up there or not. It's completely up to you. For anybody, Alireza Firouzja, as you guys are aware, he does represent France now, but he is formerly, from Iran. So for anybody who is coming from Iran, I will say salam and khayli mamnoon. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by and taking a look at my stuff. Anybody who is coming from France, I will say bonjour. Comment ça va? Comment allez-vous? Bon petit déjeuner, mes amis. Ça me fait plaisir de te voir. Appreciate you guys very much for coming by. Merci beaucoup to all of my people in France or who do speak French. I have a lot of people that live down in Dallas who do speak French. So mes amis, merci beaucoup. If you guys are ready to go, I don't usually talk this long, but there was like some things that I really kind of needed to say. We don't really know how this video is going to go. It might just get 100 or 200 views. It might get, 50,000 views. You never know. But if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. So we have e4, e5, knight comes to f3. We got knight to c6, bishop to c4, knight to f6. We have d3, bishop comes to c5. So we do have the Giuoco piano, and it is a Giuoco Pianissimo variation. So anybody who watches my stuff, we've seen this countless times. And as I always say, even though that, Giuoco Pianissimo in Italian is very quiet game, these are very rarely quiet or very quiet types of positions that we get into. They normally get pretty crazy. And this game is not an exception to that. This is a very crazy game. Very nice features in it. So, let's just keep it rolling. So we got castles by white, d6, c3. This is all very standard stuff. We got a6, bishop to g5, h6. Bishop comes down to h4. We see bishop back to h7. So as you guys are familiar, a lot of the times you'll see c3, a3, h3, h6, a6. And this is just making sure that we create pockets for the bishops and making sure that our king has Luft. For anybody who is not familiar with Luft, it's basically German for air. That's what it means in German. And you're just giving your king room to move because, if you don't, a lot of times you're subject to like a back rank mate situation. So you do try to make sure that you're not subject to that by, creating some type of Luft somewhere. So we have a4. B5 can be kind of annoying sometimes. So we're just preventing that with a4. We got g5. Bishop comes to g3. We have castles. Knight b to d2. Now, something I do want you to notice as black, you do have these pawns that are kind of suspect. Now, I will say in general, this is not good. This is not a way that you want to play. This particular position is an exception because even though, g5 and h6 looks really dangerous, the position is actually dead even, by the computer's, calculation. So, you know, we see knight back to h7, king comes to h1. And the thing that I will say about the players, specific to the players that are this level is, yes, it does seem like they're breaking like opening and developing principles. You know, like you see Firouzja pushing his pawns all in front of his king, and this bishop and this rook are still kind of not in the game. So it kind of seems like, why is he doing that when he needs to develop? But the difference between the players that are this level and, you know, your average or even strong players that aren't quite on the super gem or even GM or title player level is the fact that, you know, they kind of know positionally like when they can break the rules and when, you know, for the most part. Sometimes it does backfire. They do throw some pawns and it's messed up, but a lot of the times they are really good at assessing the position and knowing kind of when they can do stuff like this that seems like it breaks the rules. So anyway, moving on, we do see king to g7 and we have d4, which is the novelty of the game. So we have h5, and like you guys see, I mean, it looks really strange. I mean, you got these pawns just flung all in front of the king. But I mean, there is a very real threat in the position. I mean, h4 is a very real threat. So, you know, white has to do something about that. So we see h3, you know, preparing Luft for the bishop. Like I said, I mean, the bishop wants to come back and, you know, be able to live on h2 and not get trapped, because that's not what we want. Queen comes to f6. We see pawn takes e5, pawn takes e5. We have b4. And then we have g4, and g4 is kind of scary looking. You know, it kind of looks like, man, this is something that's kind of crazy, right? Well, this is actually the position in the game that if you do want to pause the video and see what white should play here, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. So there's a few things that I want to say about this particular situation. The first thing is, one thing that you should always be paying attention to is when your opponent is attacking on the wings, like the edges of the board. So like, let's say the last two files of the board. So like A, B, G, H. Because a lot of the times when you have your opponent attacking on the wing, there is usually some type of central attack that you can do. That's always like a general principle that you want to be aware of. Because a lot of the times when somebody's attacking on the wing, you can usually attack in the center with a little bit more like velocity and ferociousness and stuff like that. There's also something when you are being attacked, of course your initial response is to like go ahead and just like attack, or to either move the piece that's being attacked, like with your knight. Like you're looking at this like, man, a knight looks like it kind of needs to move somewhere. But before you do that, something that you want to consider is there some type of counterattack that I can put myself? And there's actually a counterattack in the position. And interestingly enough, it's the only move to play. Because if not, I mean, your king side gets ripped open and you're just like a sitting duck, right? So the move is actually b5. And I think, like I said, this is actually a pretty tough move to actually find. Because like I said, initially, when you're attacked like this, I mean, your automatic like jerk impulse is to just move the piece away. So that way, it's not further getting attacked. But even if you move knight down to g1, this pawn is going to take and stuff like that. I mean, your bishop is going to come and get developed and stuff like that. So, it's actually, you're actually doing pretty good for black. So, like I said, you did see b5. And this puts black in a really, really bad spot. So it takes advantage of the fact that this king and this queen are on the same diagonal. So you'll see what this looks like in a second. Pawn takes f3. Knight takes f3, so you don't even take back on c6 with the pawn. You got knight to a5, and then you have bishop to e5. And as you guys can see, this queen is now pinned to the king. So you're at least losing your queen. You're going to get some material back in exchange, but this is actually very nice for white. Knight takes c4, bishop takes f6, of course, with check. Knight takes f6, and then we have queen e2, just placing an attack on this knight over here. And so, I mean, you guys can see that, white is down 2 entire pieces. They have 2 extra pawns and stuff like that. So it's still a pretty like imbalanced game. And I mean, it's very, very strong for white. But, you do have to, have some nice technique to be able to finish something like this off. And that is something that Wesley so does have. So we have bishop to e6. Knight comes to d4, trying to remove the defender of this knight so we can just win that. Knight comes to e5. We see f4. Bishop comes to c4. So this is like a nice little counterattack, trying to get at least an exchange back. Queen comes to e3. We see knight to g6. We got f5. Bishop takes f1. Rook takes f1. And then it might seem kind of strange, but we have rook a to e8. And the reason I say that, because if we back up, you know, this is the same type of situation that you kind of had before. Like, I mean, the knight is attacked. But the problem is there really is no good place to put it. Because the problem that you have is what you would see if, let's say, you just tried to save the knight by moving it to e5. The queen is going to come to g5. And this is a particular, like, you know, tactic that you can use whenever there's a king and a knight on the same diagonal. And you can, like, insert a check by the queen. The king is going to have to move away from the knight. And so, you know, the king would move to a7 and you'd be winning the, you know, the knight on f6. So you're going to be getting, you know, one of your pieces back. So, you know, that, like I said, that's not an option. So rook takes on f1, rook a to e8, pawn takes g6, pawn takes g6, and then we have e5. Pawn takes b5, pawn takes f6 with check, rook takes f6, we see queen taking e8, rook taking f1 with check, king comes up to h2. And then we have bishop takes d4, pawn takes d4. And it might kind of seem like black has a little bit going on because they do take on a4 with their pawn. So, I mean, you're up like, you know, 2 entire pawns. But, you know, this is just something where like the queen is going to be able to always tactically be able to be forking stuff. And that's just basically what you're going to see. And then also going, you know, further than the end of the game, I'll show you like some more forks that could come up. And so that's why the queen is such a stronger piece than the rook, because the rook doesn't really have, I mean, the ability to fork like a queen does. So queen comes to e5 with check. King goes down to h6. We see queen taking c7. So now, you know, white has won a pawn back. We see b5. Queen comes to b8. We have a3. Queen takes on b5. We see rook to f4. Queen comes up to b8. And we are trying to be kind of sneaky because if the rook takes here, you know, we're looking at queen check here, and we're going to be forking those 2 pieces. So the rook comes up to f7, trying to protect. And it's actually in this position that black does resign the game. And at the end of the day, one of the variations that was given, I mean, pretty much you're in a situation where everything is winning. There's not really a lot that black can do to defend this position, but one of the major moves that is given is queen to h8 with check. And it's very straightforward and simple. The rook, it's one of the strongest moves to take on to block with h7. And then the queen would come over to f8. And as you guys can see, this is, you know, forking the king and this pawn. So, I mean, once you clear this pawn up, I mean, you just got this pawn that's passed. And, I mean, the rook is going to have to give itself up at some point for that pawn. So, I mean, you're just not looking very good at all. So, you know, it was a very nice, straightforward game. Very interesting because, I mean, I think a lot of the game was those kind of Zwischenzug moves. And just not the typical, like, moving your piece away or something like that. So, there was a lot of those little in-betweeners going on. So, it was a really nice game to me. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed it as well. But I'm going to go ahead and get going. I'm going to try to see if I can get another video done. But I will have to see how my time looks and how I'm feeling. And appreciate you guys very much. Maraming salamat, aking makaibigan. And I will see everybody next time.